Good afternoon, and thank you for being here to celebrate the life of J. Fiedler. I have just a few quite simple instructions here as we begin. I think most of you should have bulletins, and so if you can follow along the service there, that should help to keep you oriented. The main thing I want to say here at the beginning is that the family invites you to a reception after the service, and so if you'd like to go, that'll be downstairs, and there are stairs. If you go out the back, the stairs on that side, head down, and you'll be right in the place where we have the reception. If you need an elevator, you can come to this side, and somebody can direct you to the elevator and take it from there. And I think that's really about it for instructions, so we'll begin with a song by Deanna.
Sail away,
Scuderi. Our first reading will be from Mike Scuderi, who's, I think, in the back. Here comes Mike.
Of the family, I want to thank you all for coming out for this memorial for my friend Jay. The days ended and dim my eyes, but the journey long before me lies. Farewell, friends, I hear the call. The ship beside the stony wall, the foam is white and the waves are gray. Beyond the sunset leads my way. Foam is salt and the wind is free. I hear the rising of the sea. Farewell, friends. The sails are set. The wind is east and the morning. Shadows are long, lie before me beneath the ever-bending sky, but the islands lie behind the sun, and there I shall rise ere all is done. Lands there are to the west of the west, where night is quiet and sleep is rest. Guided by that lonely star beyond the utmost harbor bar, I find the havens free and fair, and beached of starlight of the sea. Ship, my ship, I seek the west, the fields and the mountain ever blessed. Farewell to Middle Earth at last. I see my star above my mast. Love you, Jay.
Roads go ever, ever on, over rock and under tree, by caves where never sun has shone, by streams that never find the sea, over snow by winter sown, and through the merry flowers of June, over grass and over stone, and under mountains in the moon. Roads go ever, ever on, under cloud and under star, yet feet that wandering have gone turn at last to home afar. Eyes that fire and stone have seen, and horror in the halls of stone, look at last on meadows green, and trees and hills they long have known. The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow if I can, pursuing it with eager feet until it joins some larger way where many paths and errands meet. The road goes ever on and on, down from the door where it began. Now far ahead the road has gone, and I must follow, if I can, pursuing it with weary feet, until it joins some larger way where many paths and errands meet. And whither then, I cannot say. The road goes ever on and on, out from the door where it began, and now far ahead the road has gone. Let others follow if they can. Let them a journey new begin. But I, at last, with weary feet, will turn towards the lighted inn, my evening rest and sleep to meet. Still, round the corner there may wait a new road or a secret gate. And though I oft have passed them by, a day shall come at last when I shall take the hidden paths that run west of the moon, east of the sun.
I am the other Ian. Thought I would share with you today how I know Jay and some of the memories that I have with Jay. I'd also like to share with you what Jay meant to me and how he impacted my life. The fact that our oldest children are named after each other, I think, is an indication of how deep that feeling is. I'm pretty sure the first time I met Jay was in 10th grade. He seemed really cool to me. He seemed confident in who he was and what interested him. We discovered we had a lot of things in common. We had very similar political views. We shared a sense of humor. Monty Python figured very prominently in our lives, and we both loved history. That interest in history frequently evolved around airplanes, which fascinated both of us. We read about them, we talked about them, we built models of them. Jay did a lot of really cool things with his mother and stepfather, Jeff. There were things that I really envied him for. They went canoeing, backpacking, they took cross-country car trips, skiing, canoeing. They did so many wonderful things that I was really envious of. They were kind enough to include me and some of my friends in those activities. They took us to Martha's Vineyard for 2 weeks, me and Jim Shea, where I learned about drafting on a bicycle. We rode all over that island in close formation for those 2 weeks. They also took me up to somewhere called the Schoolhouse in Vermont, where I did a lot of skiing and sledding with them. So through Jay, I discovered we shared a love for the outdoors, and my relationship through him and the outdoors really expanded. I got my first job my junior year in high school at the Acton Twin Cinemas. I was a cleaner there. Every other day, I would go to the theater and clean the two cinemas, which frequently took less than 30 minutes. The owners and the manager of the Acton Twin Cinemas were very indulging of the employees. They allowed us to invite in our friends and family into the movie theater for free. And they also allowed us unlimited access to the concession stand. So it wasn't long before Jay and my other friends were joining me at the theater after school, helping me clean, and when we were done cleaning, we would ride our bikes through the theaters and play Frisbee in there. Pretty soon, Jay was working at the theater too, and the theater became a real focal point of our lives. It was at the theater that we made a new and very important friend, Nick Wooten. I knew Nick vaguely through the church that my parents attended. His father was minister there. Like Jay, Nick always appeared to me as a larger-than-life, super cool, extremely popular person that I could not imagine being friends with, and yet he and Jay and I became very, very close friends. Nick was important for another reason. He introduced us to a game called Cosmic Wimp Out. Cosmic Wimp Out is a game played with 5 dice, and this game very quickly became a central activity in our lives. We all have circles of friends, and for me in high school, those circles of friends always included Jay. One other important circle of friends I had was with Mark Genest, and we listened constantly to our favorite radio station, WBCN. There was a character on in the weekends, a fictional DJ named Dwayne Ingalls Glasscock that we absolutely loved. And the three of us called each other Dwayne, and I realize now that was a sign of the deep friendship that we had. When I went off to college, Jay and I started to drift apart. Jay and Mark went on an amazing transcontinental journey that I was very, very envious of. But we continued to see each other while I was in college, mostly during the summer and then on college breaks. It was during this time that Jay met Rose, and at that point, Jay's life becomes someone else's tale to tell. But Jay and I, we remained lifelong friends. One thing I treasure most about my relationship with Jay is our ability to pick up right where we left off, no matter how long it had been since we had seen each other. I don't think this is unique to Jay and me. I think it's common to friendships that are established at that age when we transition from childhood to adulthood. My friendship with Jay and Jim and Nick and some friends with college are like that, where even if I haven't communicated with them for a few years, we can pick right back up where we left off. Was able to visit Jay a few times when he lived in Washington State when he was working for Boeing. When he moved back to Massachusetts, of course, we saw them a lot more. Two of my favorite family memories with the Fiedlers are spending a day making 18 apple pies. And then the two families and all 8 children attending an adult house party at our friend Mark Genest's in Maynard, and us arriving with 8 small children at this adult house party. It made quite a splash. I think the relationships that we form as we transition from childhood to adulthood are so strong because this is the time when we are forming the building blocks of our adult selves. My father died more than 20 years ago, and his death caused me to contemplate his impact on my life in ways I had never thought about before. And Jay's death has had the same effect on me. I think it's safe to say that Jay's impact on my life, on who I am, is every bit as great, if not greater, than my father's. Jay and I shared a love for the outdoors. We had very compatible senses of humor, political views, and yet there's so much more about Jay that I looked at and admired and sought to emulate. Jay was a very skilled craftsman, and I saw that in high school when we were building airplane models. But that talent really exploded with his reenacting. His reenacting not only showcased his skill as a historian, but also as a craftsman. I don't think it's a secret that Jay and Rose started a family a little bit earlier than they expected, but Jay met that challenge head on. And if you'll pardon the pun, he rose to the occasion. Jay didn't try to escape or shrug off his duty. He embraced fatherhood and his family fully. Jay, I think, was an incredible, loving father and husband. That, to me, I think, is his greatest achievement and something I admire him so much for. With their family came the challenge of supporting that family, and again, Jay rose to the challenge. This time it was with the help of his father, Jim. Jim helped him get his airframe and power plant licenses, and with those licenses, he was able to first get a job at Boeing and later at Bombardier. And those 2 jobs are the jobs that supported the Fiedlers the longest. After Jay had been at Boeing for a while, his father Jim invited him to California to work with him and eventually take over the business that he had established. And that's an invitation that Jay and Rose took him up on. Jay did not take to sales, and it wasn't long before they decided they were going to move back to Massachusetts. And I mention this because I think it's such a remarkable thing for Jim to want his son Jay to follow in his footsteps and to offer him his business. And then when he realized that that was not a good fit for Jay, to have the grace to let Jay move on to something else. And that's a characteristic I saw in Jay. Everyone that Jay encountered, he offered unconditional support of. He was always very, very supporting of everybody who crossed his path. Jay and Rose, they made it to the finish line. Unlike almost everyone else in our circle of friends, their marriage has endured, and that is something I think is remarkable and something that I admire them both for. I have a story to share with you that shows my trust and admiration for Jay, or it shows my gullibility. It's probably both. Jay and I were having a conversation one night in high school, and I made what is called a spoonerism. I didn't know the term. Jay said, "That's an oonerspism." So I tucked that information away. A few weeks later, I was in high school English class, and the English teacher made a spoonerism. Then realizing what she had done, she turned to the class and said, "Does anybody know what that's called?" And I, with all seriousness, raised my hand and said, "That's an oonerspism." And she looked at me with a look that made it very clear that she thought I was being a wise ass. I knew right then that Jay had gotten me, but I trusted him for it. Jay was my best friend. He helped make me who I am by serving as a model that I admired. Jay will live on through me as part of me, and he will live on as part of all of you as well.
If there is ever a tomorrow when we are not together, there is something you must always remember. You're braver than you believe, you're stronger than you seem, and you're smarter than you think. But the most important thing is, even when we're apart, I'll always be with you.
Before I begin, I'd like to say thank you to Rose very much for asking me to speak on behalf of a museum that Jay really valued and put a lot of effort and energy into supporting, but then also to speak to his pursuits as a living historian and his years of reenacting and all of the friends that he made within that circle. I first met Jay about 20 years ago. And as many of you know, Jay had a profound interest in the French and Indian War, the American Revolution, and the campaigns that unfolded in the Lake Champlain corridor and Lake George. And if you have an interest in that, you know that Fort Ticonderoga is the place to go to learn about it, to be a part of it, and then to teach it to other people. And Jay took that to heart. He volunteered his time in a way that no one else has volunteered their time at that museum. He was always someone that I could count on when I needed people to be present. His attitude was always amazingly positive. And he was also a very calming person to be around. You could be in his presence. It wouldn't matter if the place was on fire, burning down. Jay had a way of just bringing everyone down a notch and making people see more of the important things that could be in front of them instead of all of the things that were bad all around you. And I really valued that about Jay. I also really admired how humble he was as well. I would attempt to throw or see people throw compliments at him, and he would deflect them back on to somebody else or to the person who tried to, give him a compliment. It was really amazing to watch and have an example of someone, who was pretty selfless in that regard. His contributions to the museum that I work at were very, very, very significant. He didn't get stuck in snowstorms driving up to come spend time with us. He deliberately drove through them so that he could volunteer doing our living history events. To that point, the last time I saw Jay, a number of us from the museum drove down to say goodbye, and Rose met us in the hallway and said, "Oh, you're the guys who I've been competing with in my marriage for time." And we're like, "Ooh, yes, that's us. Nice to meet you." But it really goes to show how much time, effort, and energy Jay spent with us. To echo some of what Ian said too, his skills as a craftsman were pretty profound. He supported us not only with his time, but also would participate in workshops that I would teach. That the money to those workshops would go to our budget so that we could make more uniforms, buy more muskets, that kind of thing. But then basically he would ask, "What uniform do you want me to make?" So that we as a museum could tell the story of Ticonderoga. And he did that again and again and again, and did it with skill that a lot of people don't have. And it was all to support us. And for that, I'm very grateful. I'm also very grateful as a friend. When I was 14, my mom died, and then I moved to Deerfield, Massachusetts. My dad got remarried. I didn't have any friends. I had this profound interest in the French and Indian War, and I really wanted to expand my knowledge of it. And I knew that reenacting was this fun way to do it. So I learned how to use the internet and started Google searching, and that ultimately led me to Jay. And he took me under his wing. He was a sponsor of mine. He was a mentor of mine. Fairly certain first time I drank alcohol, I was with Jay. I don't think he provided it, but he was definitely there. And he gave me the home that I was looking for with living historians and reenacting, and ultimately I owe the career path that I have to him because he was instrumental in guiding me there. Yeah, a lot of people, they wonder why people are into reenacting. History is certainly part of it, but ultimately it's the friendships that have people coming back for more. And I'll miss my friend.
Thank you to all for the things you have shared, and a special thanks to Ian and Gib for those memories. So last week, Friday a week ago, I met with Rose and with their sons and with Betsy Scuderi to talk about this service and to talk about what I might add in my own comments. So when I left their house, I confess that I was feeling a little daunted. I speak at a lot of funerals, and I have a pretty clear formula that I follow. I start with my relationship with the person who has died, and I end with Christian stuff. Well, in this case, I didn't have the honor of knowing Jay personally, and I was told in no uncertain terms that Jay would not want a lot of Christian stuff, which left me without much formula. But it turns out it is easy to celebrate Jay's life, and that's true even for someone who didn't know him personally. So I want to celebrate two things about Jay's life that I have learned from others. Both of them have already come up. So the first is Jay's commitment to reenacting. I have enjoyed watching reenactments. I am very clear that reenacting is a great way both to learn about history and to teach history. And I love history. But for myself, I hope never to be in a reenactment. As best I can tell, reenacting takes a special kind of toughness and also a little bit of craziness. And that craziness, the craziness that it takes to be a reenactor, is the first thing I want to celebrate about Jay's life. I admire anyone who has a passion for something and commits to that passion in the way that Jay did. As I understand it, for the last 15 or more years, Jay spent as much time as he could participating in reenactments, willingly submitting himself to heat and cold and all manner of discomfort. Even in the last 4 years, in what turned out to be Jay's final illness, and through some tough times, Jay kept reenacting. I gather Jay was hoping to join a reenactment on what turned out to be the last weekend of his life. That kind of passion, the passion that Jay had for reenacting, is a big part of what gives human life its meaning. I have 2 adult sons. Both of my sons are thriving, thankfully. But neither has found their passion yet. Some people never find their passion. But Jay did find his passion. And Jay committed himself to living that passion, to doing what he loved, and that is something to be celebrated. The second thing I want to celebrate about Jay is his capacity to love and to be loved. So at their house last week, Rose said several times that Jay was all about family, that Jay would do anything for his kids. Mike Scuderi, who loved Jay like a brother, said the same thing about Jay as a friend. For me, perhaps the most moving testimony to Jay's capacity to love and to be loved was a small detail that Rose shared that Friday a week ago. So somebody, and I'm thinking maybe Gib, but somebody texted Jay about possibly reenacting, about participating in a reenactment on what turned out to be the last weekend of his life. And Rose responded on Jay's behalf that he was coming to the end. And with a couple of hours, the hospital room was full of Jay's friends who had dropped everything to visit him. And that is another thing that I want for my children. People in their lives who love them enough to drop everything when they really need it. Because along with finding one's passion, love is the other thing that makes human life meaningful. Now, one of the things I like to do when someone has died is to hold on to a particular image of a person. Now, I didn't know Jay, but Rose gave me a sweet image of him when I was at their house. So Rose likes to care for injured or abandoned squirrels, which, let us note, is its own kind of crazy, and one that Jay apparently pretended not to share. But Rose showed me the elaborate kind of cage rehab center that Jay built for the squirrels. And Ray told me that Jay sometimes slept on the couch with a baby squirrel on his chest. That's the image of Jay that I'll carry forward. Now, I did promise Rose that I would not go on about Christian stuff, and I am going to honor that promise. But I have two quick things. So one of the church fathers, a man from the 2nd century named Irenaeus, said that the glory of God is the human being fully alive. That was Jay, a human being who knew how to live, who lived and who loved well, who was fully alive. Second, my tradition says that at death, life is changed, not ended, that after death we enter into new and fuller life with God, and that someday we will all be reunited with those that we love. Now, I believe that's true for Jay. But people who love and live well, as Jay did, have another kind of afterlife that we can all agree on, one that Ian mentioned. They live on in the lives of the people they inspired. Now, I can now add myself to that list. But above all, they live on in the hearts and the lives of the people that they loved and who loved them. As Ian said, Jay lives on in all of you, and that is a great blessing indeed. It's a blessing both for him, and it is a blessing for you. Now, I end with a blessing that I took from a letter that Mike wrote to me about Jay. Seems more appropriate for Jay than anything in the Episcopal prayer book. Keep your powder dry, keep the sun on your face, and keep the wind at your back. Amen. Now I have another song from Deanna.
Of all the money that e'er I spent it in good company, and all the harm that e'er I've done, alas, it was to none but me. And all I've done for want of wits to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be with you all. Of all the comrades that e'er I've had, they are sorry for my going away. And all the sweethearts that e'er I've had, they would wish me I'll gently rise and I'll softly call, good night and joy be with you all. Good night and joy be with you all.
So I'll end with the final blessing, and immediately after the blessing again, I invite, or rather the family invites everyone to go downstairs to continue the celebration, to continue sharing memories, and to support each other. This is a song of cheerfulness and joy that comes from Bridget of Kildare. We would like to give a lake of beer to God, to make heaven a cheerful spot, because the happy heart is true. With white cups of love and sweet pitchers of mercy, the saints and angels of heaven would gather around us to dance and sing and raise a mug. There by the lake of beer, we would be one with God and the men and women of heaven. We drink good health forever, and every drop would be a prayer. So here and now, as in heaven, may we enjoy an abundance of peace, and may the vessels of charity be kept full, the treasures of mercy be rich. May cheerfulness and joy preside over all. Again, thank you for being here this afternoon.